Hello, let's talk about JavaScript. In the last video that I did, I talked about the object. And, here's our object here. And, by nature, the object has properties and values. And they're arranged in pairs, so every value can be identified by a property. And I've opened up this document that I talked about in the last video here in the browser. And we can open up the console here, and I'll log these values there, and you'll see that when I run the page, I've created an object, I've given it 3 properties: age, name, and shoe size, and down here I've logged those values, age, name, and shoe size, to the console. So you see 40, Joe, and 9.5. And the object allows us to, arrange values and identify them by their property name. So it's organized in that way. In this video, I'd like to talk about the array. And the array is very similar to an object, except it doesn't have property names, so it just has values listed. And instead of accessing those values by the property name, every value is associated with an index. So the index is just the position in the array. Let's do an example. Let's imagine I make an array of names. So I'll say names equals the empty square brackets. So this creates an empty array. If you want to add names to an array, you can, or you want to add values to an array, you can add those values here too and just initialize an array with your values, right? So this would be an array with 0 items in it. And if I wanted to add a few items, maybe I'll add Abe, Bob, oops, wait, let's put that in quotes there, and Chuck, wait, let's get those quotation marks there. Right, so now I have an array with 3 items in it, and there we go. It looks very similar to the object. The difference with the array is the array uses the square brackets, and it doesn't have property names. So every element in the array is just listed and then separated with a comma. Okay? So if you want to see the values from the array, you can access them by their index. And you do it in this way. So you'll name the array. I'll put names. That's this, variable name that is the array, right? And then you follow the name with the square brackets, and then you put the index of the value that you want. So what does that mean? Well, it means here's my array. I follow with the square brackets, and the index is the position of the element in the array. And it's 0 based, so the first item is 0, and the second item is at position 1, and the third item would be at position 2. So here we would be logging the name Abe, okay? Let's see, console log, and then let's log names, bracket item number 1, right? And then I'll refresh the browser here. Oh wait, I got named there. So actually, sometimes these error messages are great. If you're just beginning at this, you run into these errors and you don't know what to do. What I say is, if you're doing JavaScript, always have the console open, and if you see an error, immediately look in the column here, and you'll see the file name, and then a colon, and then that's the line number where the problem is. And then you can read the error message too. So it says uncaught reference error. And then it says named is not defined. So, I've created an identifier or something with this name, named, N-A-M-E-D, but I never defined that. I never gave it a value, right? So looking here, you can see I use the name names with an S, but then here I type named by mistake. Let's change that, and then also notice this is on line 21. So, the console told me exactly where the problem was. So let's save that, and we'll refresh it here and see if it works this time. Oh look, there's Abe and Bob. Okay, so I'm getting the correct output, and indeed, names bracket 0 gives me the first item in the array, and names bracket number 1 gives me the second item, right? If we ask for an item that is out of range, right? And when we talk about an array and we say out of range, we mean something that is an index that doesn't exist, right? Or beyond the count of the array. So, this would be 0, 1, and 2. So if I tried to ask for, index number 3 or greater, then that would be out of range, right? Let's see what happens. Oh, well, there's Abe and Bob, but the out of range value returns undefined. Okay, this is sort of a catch-all. So if anytime you're in JavaScript and you try to access a value that hasn't been given a value yet, then JavaScript will give you an undefined, right? So that's actually kind of recognized in the program, right? So so there you go. There's arrays. Let's do a little more just for fun. If you have an array, you can add items to it and get the count of items in it, after you've created it. So you don't have to put everything in it at once. You could just start with an empty array and then add more items to it. So for example, if I wanted to add, a new item, I can say dot push, and this will add a new item into the end of the array, and I'll add Dave. And then if I want to get the count of the array, I'll say console log. I want to log the count, right? So I want to find out how many items are in there, and maybe I want to print that into the console here, right? So what I'll do is I'll say names dot length, okay? And then that will give me the length of the array. So that should be the first item we see here. Let's refresh that. Oh, so there's 4 items in the array, right? And then there's Abe, Bob. Oh, and now Dave shows up because now I have a 4th item, and so this 4th value is no longer undefined, right? Because we had Abe, Bob, Chuck, and then we pushed Dave. And so when you push an item into an array, it's like you're adding it to the end of the array here. It's just as if we had typed Dave here. If I leave Dave here, then adding Dave here will add 2 Daves, right? And there'll be another item there. So anyway, hopefully that gives you a quick introduction into using arrays with JavaScript. Pardon me, sorry about that. I'll be using that hopefully in the future in the parse tutorial. So hopefully this will give us some basic skills to follow that tutorial through to the end. Thanks for watching.